DFS community, welcome into the Week 15 edition of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is episode number 75 of the Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches to determine the game scripts and player outcomes. So, the show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at Todzilla1337, and you can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. So, name of the game, Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches. We're always told games in the NFL are won and lost in the trenches, so this is the one report that you can come to get that information. And if it's won and lost in the trenches, how are the trenches lining up? We look at the offensive and defensive matchups and pit those against each other and say, hey, based off of this is what we think is going to happen in the game. Here's some player outcomes that you can expect or are likely. Here's some prop bets that you might be able to place on there. Here's some, hey, I think it's going to be an over this game total and under this game total, things like that. That's what we do here. So if you're a first-time watcher / listener of the Adjusted Line Play Report, welcome in. We got a full slate for you this episode. So 16 games across the NFL. We're going to go over all of them except for the Thursday night game, which I have on the Thursday Night Theory. So go ahead and look at that one. A very good matchup. As always, we're going to start on the main slate and the number one game on the main slate here. So that's Buffalo heading into Detroit here. Massive game total here. 54.5 points for their Vegas game total. To be honest, I think that is one of the highest marks here in the last about 5 years in terms of Vegas game total. So wheels up on that according to Vegas in terms of the Vegas game total. We should expect lots and lots of fantasy points here for our teams. All right, so 2.5 point home favorites here for Detroit in this game over Buffalo. 54.5 Vegas game total. That gives Detroit 28.5 for their team implied total. That is second best on the main slate, which is actually 13 total games here. So they are number 2 out of 26 teams. Buffalo at 26 for their team implied total is the third best out of those 26 teams. Now, getting into the Buffalo side, we can see they are top 5 across the board on offense. Number 1 in offensive pass protection. Number 2 in offensive pass DVOA. And then in the run blocking, number 2 in run blocking, number 5 in run DVOA. All very good marks for their offense. The interesting thing here for Detroit, number 24 in defensive pass rush. And this is telling me Buffalo is going to have time to throw the ball. They're not going to take a lot of sacks in this particular game as well. Detroit not generating sacks, and if they are, they're in likely scenarios like third and long. And Buffalo not giving up a lot of sacks there. So don't expect sacks here from Detroit. Otherwise, expect them to have some time to throw in Buffalo, which is good for their pass game. The unique aspect is the rest of these matchups, the furthest away is the run blocking here. Number 2 for Buffalo, number 5 for Detroit's defense. They're all studs eat type of scenarios. I don't know if we necessarily have any studs on Buffalo. Amari Cooper is past his prime. Keon Coleman is injured. We don't know if he's coming back. He's a rookie. He hasn't shown himself to be a stud. Khalil Shakir has been very good. We have Dalton Kincaid there getting receptions. We have Matt Collins getting receptions. There's just a lot of balls to spread around there. We even get the running backs involved, James Cook, Ty Johnson as well. So I think that continues here. They spread the ball around. My money in terms of what I feel safest with is always Khalil Shakir in that scenario, but any of these receivers are capable of being the beneficiary of this Josh Allen-led offense, especially when there's time to throw. I'd expect a little bit more of those longer routes to develop and be able to throw. The problem is, they might be not as explosive as you have seen in the past, just because Detroit here is number 1 in pass DVOA. The interesting thing with Detroit, especially in the run game here, 2, number 5, number 6, they keep losing people on defense. They're down like 8 or 9 starters on defense, and I don't think these numbers are necessarily as reflective of their current state. I think The one guy that they had that was left on the defensive line is now in concussion protocol, so pay attention to that. He might not even play. That was Neal, I think. But just an interesting thing across the board. Close matchups, studs eat scenario. I'd expect James Cook to be the better of the running backs here for Buffalo this week. I know Ty Johnson has gotten involved, and we've seen Ray Davis get involved a little bit. I think this was more of a James Cook type week for the run game at least. So really nothing to take home here. It's a close matchup across the board. Buffalo should have time to throw, but it's going to be a tough-fought game where they're going to have to grind out those drives, long, probably methodical drives rather than being super explosive, getting the ball down the field in a hurry type of stuff. I don't see that happening here for Buffalo. Now on the Detroit side for offense, they're number 11 in pass protection, Buffalo 18 in pass rush. A little bit of time here to throw the ball for Detroit. There's not a ton of sack differential here. I mean, it's a +7 in Detroit's favor, but really more of a standard day at the office with a little bit of extra time compared to what they're perhaps used to against this Buffalo defense. And then the pass DVOAs are pretty close here. Detroit number 10 on offense, Buffalo 11 on defense. Again, those are one of those studs eat scenarios. I think that's Amon-Ra St. Brown. If they do have a little bit of time to throw, Jameson Williams is always a viable candidate to catch a deep pass in this particular matchup, especially if Buffalo's putting up points and this is more of a back and forth affair. I'd expect Jameson Williams to actually get heavily involved in that aspect. But if it's more of a grinded out back and forth type of affair, Jameson Williams maybe not getting as many attempts in the offense or targets his way. The other person I think that benefits from the studs eat is Sam Laporta. I think he can do well in this particular environment as well. The interesting part here, the best of maybe any of these matchups besides Buffalo having time to throw, is Detroit's run game. They're number 1 and number 2 in run blocking and run DVOA. But Buffalo, that's their strong suit. They're number 7 and number 8 in those defensive stopping categories. The interesting thing for Buffalo is they are top 3 actually in adjusted fantasy points given up at the running back position. I think only Carolina and Jacksonville are worse than Buffalo in terms of points, fantasy points given up to the running back position. That's because they give up a lot of receptions and a lot of receiving touchdowns to the running backs. If you want to take that into consideration for your DFS lineups or prop bets, Jahmyr Gibbs anytime touchdown is probably a likely scenario. If they're going to have some time to throw the ball, he might not get as involved in the pass game, but they should be okay running the ball here. They're +6 in both of those categories. Nothing crazy to write home about, but it's probably going to be the best matchup in terms of anything being lopsided in this. So it seems like very evenly matched on paper. Offenses and defenses here slightly in the favor perhaps of Detroit versus Buffalo's offense here. Pace of play, Buffalo is overall in 21st, but neutral situation, middle of the pack at 15. Detroit overall is very slow, but they're winning in a lot of games. So when it's neutral situation, they're 19th, so a little bit below average. Considering the matchup on paper looks pretty even here. We do have studs that Detroit can get the ball to. Buffalo probably not as much in the pass game or really in the run game. I think James Cook is maybe their best asset overall in terms of pass game or rush game and being a stud, and he's not really, I think, at that tier. So I think Buffalo maybe struggles a little bit if they're getting touchdown drives or scoring on their drives. It could be potentially field goals or long, drug out, methodical drives that are probably more likely to kill the clock, have it run down. Same with Detroit. It looks like they're going to be maybe a little bit more methodical moving the ball, but more successful than Buffalo here. Both teams kind of middle of the pack or below average in terms of pace of play. I don't mind the under on this particular game. It's going to be very, very popular in DFS just because that Vegas game total is so high. The one thing that we do have in the favor for Buffalo's offense is the fact that Detroit is just playing with a bunch of backups there on defense. So this is perhaps a little more of a facade than anything else, all of these green numbers for Detroit's defense. But just keep in mind, they've had those injuries for quite a while now, and they're still number 1 in pass DVOA. So they've been doing a good job even with those backups on defense. All right, we got 2 games this week, tied for number 2 on the slate. all the way down at 47. So that's a okay number here, but a far cry from the 54.5 we saw as the number 1 game, but they are tied with another matchup here at 47. We have Cincinnati heading into Tennessee as 5-point road favorites. Based off of that Vegas line, that gives Cincinnati a 26-point team implied total, Tennessee at 21. For Cincinnati, that is the third best, or tied for the third best on the main slate. Tennessee all the way down at 18th out of the 26 teams on this main slate. So getting into the Cincinnati side, pretty even in the offensive pass protection, number 15 versus number 16. Standard day at the office for Joe Burrow. That's good. He is okay, even if he is getting pressured, but standard day at the office for him, which is good for Cincinnati in general because Burrow is a stud outright. But then the pass DVOA, number 6 for Cincinnati, that's green. Tennessee middle of the pack at 15, +9 favor here for Cincinnati's offense, which tells me they're going to be pretty explosive on the pass game here. I think standard day at the office, we're going to see a lot of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins going off in this particular matchup. And yeah, I think, it's just going to be very successful. Those three definitely in play for any sort of DFS stuff, especially as a pivot point, perhaps off of that main big score there with Buffalo and Detroit. Getting into the run blocking side, that's a different story though. Cincinnati number 22 and number 24, kind of bad on paper despite how good Chase Brown has been in fantasy this year. Tennessee number 3 and number 9 in these run categories. They've been pretty good all season. I don't know if there's any injuries along their defensive line there, but that defensive run DVOA has slowly been creeping down, almost getting out of the top 10 there. But this is on paper not a great matchup for Chase Brown. He does get involved in the pass game, as we've seen before, but this doesn't really bode super well for him getting a ton of targets. If Tennessee was really getting after the quarterback, I'd see Chase Brown with 5 or 6 targets. In a game like this, maybe it's more of the 3 or 4 variety, and he struggles a little bit running the ball, but Tennessee should be moving the ball. They're probably going to be in scoring opportunities, which means Brown does have opportunities to get close to the end zone and get 6 fantasy points, with the offense doing most of the heavy lifting via the pass game. So just keep that in mind. Certainly viable in DFS and should be in your starting lineups for the playoff series. Getting into the Tennessee side, they're number 30 in offensive pass protection, number 31 in offensive pass DVOA. Fortunately for them, they're playing Cincinnati, who is 30th and 30th in those categories. This is indicative that they should be otherwise more successful throwing the ball than they have been in the past. Problem is they played Jacksonville last week, and Jacksonville is even worse than Cincinnati. I believe they're 32 and 32 in these categories, and Tennessee didn't do squat in the air with that. Will Levis seems like he hurt his right shoulder just before halftime in that game as well, so monitor that. But on paper, this is looking like Tennessee should be better than usual in the pass game. It's pretty good for Calvin Ridley and company there. I guess Nick Westbrook-Akini is maybe an option. If you want to say Chigakwankwo gets involved, that could be a potential dart throw for a tight end. And then over in the run game, it's much of the same. 21 in run blocking, Cincinnati 20th, very even there. Tennessee 23rd on offense in the run DVOA, Cincinnati 26th. So very, very slight favor there of Tennessee, but one of those studs eat type scenarios. I would expect Tennessee's offense to look a little bit better in this particular matchup against Cincinnati. It's at home. Cincinnati's going into Tennessee to kind of do that. So the 5 Vegas line, I think that's going to be very close. I think Tennessee will be able to kind of keep this close with Cincinnati. We saw them just struggle against Dallas, even though their defense is improving. It does look like Tennessee maybe struggles to run the ball as efficiently. They should be very good via the air. In those situations, too, I might say, hey, they may be very good moving the ball down the field, but they could stall out here, especially if this run game doesn't get going. You might see a lot of action from the kicker here from Cincinnati. I believe that's Cade York, so keep an eye out for him this week, too. If you play in a league with kickers and he's on your waivers, he could see 2 or 3 attempts here in the field goal category, maybe even more than that based off of the stuff on paper. I don't want to necessarily give out the upset alert, but this could be closer than people are expecting from Tennessee. I think they should be okay on the offensive side of the ball. All right, and that other game total at 47 was Miami heading into Houston. Again, tied for second on the weekly game total. Houston 3-point home favorites, giving them a team implied total of 25 points. Miami at 22. Those are good for 7th and 14th best on those team implied totals on this main slate. Getting into the Miami side, they may need to get the ball out quickly here. Number 19 in pass protection, Houston number 2, generating a lot of sacks. Then pass DVOA Miami number 18. This number is vastly improving. It came down from in the 30s when Skylar Thompson was playing, and now Tua has been lights out these last 4 or 5 weeks. Last month, I think he is the number 1 point scorer in fantasy football amongst quarterbacks. So take that into consideration as well when I'm talking about these numbers. But Houston number 3 in pass DVOA, Miami number 18. Telling me Miami's going to have to get the ball out quickly, which they don't have any issue doing. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and the tight end there, Jonnu Smith, very, very good at getting open quickly. And then they always have Devon Achane this year, very heavily involved in the pass game, and I would expect more of that to continue. This Houston getting after the quarterback maybe is neutralized by Miami's play style here. I think this doesn't affect Miami as much as it could other teams. And then this DVOA aspect telling me that Miami might not be super explosive, but again, this number is improving under Tua. They've been very dominant in terms of putting up yardage, pass game-wise, the last month or so. It could continue here, or we might see them struggle a little bit against this Houston defense. It is, on paper, a pretty good matchup for Houston's defense. And then the run blocking category, Miami's been surprisingly bad in that this year. 28th and 30th, those are red matchups. Houston number 2 and number 1 in stopping the run. This is telling me Miami is not going to be very successful running the ball, so watch out for Achane in this particular game in terms of getting you there in the run game. It doesn't look likely, but he certainly has the talent to break off a long run at any point. So you never necessarily want him out of your lineup, especially as he gets so involved in the pass game. And they're probably going to get the ball out quick based off of this Houston defense. But on paper, this looks like a big blowout here for Houston. They should be able to dominate Miami on defense. And on paper, it looks like Miami should struggle. Just know that that pass game probably is a lot better than a 19 and 18. The way that they've been playing recently with Tua. This is a season-long stat, which includes a lot of games from Skylar Thompson being really bad. They were way in the bottom 3, I think, by the time Tua got back, and now they worked themselves back into the 19th and 18th here, which probably means they're top 5 recently. Getting into the Houston side, these are pretty even matchups as well. 25 in pass protection is red, but Miami 27th in defensive pass rush. This tells me that Houston may otherwise have more time than they're used to throw the ball. They're not going to take a lot of sacks in this. That's going to be good for the pass game to be effective. And how effective are they going to be? Well, they're 23rd in pass DVOA, Miami 20th. That's pretty even. In those scenarios, they say studs eat, especially if they're going to have more time to pass than they're used to. That's going to be good for deeper shots, and a lot of times that has been Nico Collins. I would expect him to have a big game based off of these matchups. With time to throw, a little additional time to throw, the DVOA being so close where usually in those scenarios the studs eat. I think that's Nico Collins in this offense. We saw Tank Dell last year be that, but just this year, that's not his MO. He's certainly capable, I'm sure, of going off in a matchup like this, but I really like Nico Collins in this matchup. He seems like a lock for a big game. And then the run blocking side, Houston 25th and 26th. Those are also red, not good. Miami 16th in stopping the run. That's a +9 in their favor on defense. And then stopping the run, they're 24th. So in those scenarios, it's a studs eat. We've seen Joe Mixon be very effective this year. And based off of this, isn't like a great matchup for Mixon, but I think if the offense is moving the ball through the air, it's going to be similar to what I had mentioned with Chase Brown in the previous 47 Vegas game total matchup where, hey, the offense should be able to get them at least into scoring position, and he's always a threat, once they get inside that 20, inside the red zone to get into the end zone with his legs or even catching the ball. So keep that in mind. If you think Miami might be able to get some pressure on Houston just because their offensive line is so bad, that's just more reason that Mixon may get some fantasy points. So Interesting one here. It looks like Miami should get dominated. Their offense shouldn't be very good. And then we have Houston being maybe a little bit better than expected in that pass game. I really like Nico Collins in this matchup. He's probably my favorite person out of all of these. And, Miami may be looking more of a fade in general, and then getting some Nico Collins there. All right, we also have 2 games tied for 4th best game total on the main slate. First one that we're going to be looking at here is in the late slate here. New England heading into Arizona, and that's a 46 Vegas game total, one less than those number 2 games. We have Arizona actually as the 6-point home favorite, giving them a 26 team implied total. Again, that's tied for 3rd with 2 other teams at least here. 3rd best out of the 26 teams on this main slate. New England at 20 for their team implied total is the 19th highest on the main slate. Getting into the New England side, they're right across the board on offense, which isn't good. 26th and 27th in the pass categories. Arizona 14th and 13th. Those are 12, 13, 14, to the positive of Arizona's defense. New England in the run blocking categories, 24th and 32nd. Arizona 17th and 13th. Those are also pretty big values. The closest one here is about a +7 for New England run blocking, and Arizona run stopping, +7 in the defensive favor. So really not looking good for New England here. Arizona's defense comes into play for DFS. I don't know if they're cheap or not, but it does look good on paper for New England to dominate. And actually, just going back to that number 2 matchup, we had Miami game. The defense there against Miami, it could be a sneaky good option this week. Kind of an interesting play, but either way, Arizona here looks interesting. If they're going to have to get the ball out quick, or they're going to be under pressure, that could be Drake May dumping the ball off to Antonio Gibson, getting it out to the tight ends Hunter Henry and whoever else they got back there. Could be more of that type of a game where Drake May is using his legs more, getting it to the running backs and the tight ends, and that's kind of how that offense moves. Run game will struggle, so it's probably a fade Ramondre Stevenson type week. On the Arizona side, they're number 7 in pass protection, New England 28. So these are 2 red-green matchups on the pass game for Arizona. This is one where Kyler Murray should really hum in a matchup like this. Plenty of time to throw, and they should be very explosive. Just keep that in mind. If you're going to stack it in DFS, I think Wilson is a sneaky dart throw partner. Could be a Wilson and the tight end, Trey McBride, if you want to get a little bit different with Kyler Murray there and say, hey, I think Wilson's going to score a touchdown or 2, and Trey McBride finally gets on the board in terms of scoring touchdowns. But really looking good for Kyler this week in this matchup. And then the run game also looking pretty good. Not as good as the pass game, but James Conner should be humming in this as well, especially if Arizona is going to be up big. 14th and 13th for Arizona in those run categories. New England 26th and 28th. Those are about +12, +15 in Arizona's favor on offense there in the run category. So really, really looking like Arizona should blow out New England. This Vegas 6-point line, I don't think New England covers that. I'm pretty confident in Arizona putting up points. I'm pretty confident in Arizona stopping New England's offense here. I don't think New England gets within 6. So if you're placing any sort of bets, I'm good with Arizona covering that 6-point spread here. Should be pretty smooth sailing for them. Would even, not mind placing money on Arizona to go over their 26 team implied total here. Just in general, they should be getting the ball back frequently from New England. They may even turn the ball over, and then that offense should be humming both pass game and run game. And the other game at 46 and tied for 4th best on this main slate is Green Bay heading into Seattle. This was everybody like best ball bros matchups that they wanted in the playoffs. Seattle, Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago all kind of play each other in the playoffs of best ball season. So this is one of those matchups, and it does look juicy on paper at least. So top 4 game here. 46 Vegas game total, Green Bay 2.5-point road favorite. So Vegas thinking it's going to be close, which is also good for maybe back and forth affairs. Green Bay 24.25 team implied total is 8th best on the main slate. Seattle at 21.75 is 16th best. A lot of green here for Green Bay on offense. They're number 2 in pass protection, not taking a lot of sacks. They're number 3 in pass DVOA, which is good. Seattle inside the top 10, though. Number 10 in pass rush, number 9 in pass DVOA. So despite Green Bay being pretty good, they may otherwise find it a little bit more difficult this week than they have in past weeks for that pass game. But otherwise, they're in the positive categories there. It should be an okay week for them. It's more of a pick your poison of which wide receiver do you want to play if you're going to attack that pass game. A lot of times it's just, hey, give me Jordan Love and hope for the best with one of the other guys that you stack him with, or maybe you just stack him with Tucker Kraft, and that's all you do. You get that quarterback tight end stack and get out of there. The run game, though, looks far better. So number 15 in run blocking, Seattle 27th in run stopping. Big benefit there for Green Bay's offense. And then 4th in run DVOA is Green Bay's offense. 12th for Seattle's run defense. That's a +8 in Green Bay's favor. I'd expect, based off of this matchup, maybe the pass game struggles a little bit compared to usual. They're going to lean a little bit more on Josh Jacobs in this. I think Josh Jacobs is the player from Green Bay you're probably going to want this week. So congratulations to all those best ball bros that got Josh Jacobs. Looks like he's probably in line for a touchdown. Anytime touchdown, I'd be okay placing that prop bet for Green Bay. Josh Jacobs in this particular matchup. I think that's a good one to place a bet on. Seattle side on offense, 21st in pass protection, Green Bay 20th. Otherwise, standard day at the office for Geno Smith. I think that is all right. In terms of the DVOA, pass DVOA, Green Bay number 10 on defense, Seattle 16th on offense. So that's a +6 in Green Bay, the defense favor, telling me that Seattle may struggle a little bit compared to usual to throw the ball. They've otherwise been kind of up and down in that category. Started off the season with a huge pass rate that kind of dipped down, the last month or so into really run heavy for Seattle. I think they're now, bottom 3rd team in terms of pass rate over expectation. So they've really kind of trimmed and flipped the script in terms of what they're doing on offense. And then the run game, that's actually the flip-flop of Green Bay, where the run game looks a lot better. The run game looks a lot worse here for Seattle. Number 27 in run blocking, Green Bay 15th. Seattle 20th in run DVOA, Green Bay 10th. This is telling me Seattle should struggle to run the ball. Again, that should have been the case last week, but Charbonnet absolutely obliterated my call that you should avoid him in large field tournaments. I really didn't see him having any success against that Arizona defense, who had been playing very well as of late. He went in there and absolutely shredded them and made me look like an idiot on all of Twitter. So congrats to Charbonnet. Just keep an eye out on that Kenneth Walker injury. If he's not playing, Zach Charbonnet is certainly an option for cash games. But in this, I don't see Seattle necessarily leading in this. I think Green Bay does have the better matchups here. Seattle's kind of behind the 8 ball in both pass and run categories. I think Green Bay can take this and get a lead and kind of hold that lead, run the ball. Seattle probably not going to be running the ball very often. If they are passing it, it looks like they should have time to throw, which probably doesn't lead to a lot of Zach Charbonnet volume in the pass game. But yeah, you never know. It's not looking good for him. It didn't look good for him last week, but he did shred up every lineup that he was in. So congrats to him once again in that category. But really, I like Green Bay covering this 2.5 line against Seattle. It does look very likely that they should be winning by more than a field goal in this particular matchup. They do play slow. Vegas game score total at 46. I'm fine with that being bet under. Green Bay could play ultra slow, run out that clock, and Seattle may not be putting up a bunch of points. So keep that in mind. All right, now the 6th best game total on the slate. We drop down half a point here to 45.5 points. Tampa Bay heading into the Dome of Los Angeles as 3-point underdogs. So Chargers, that gives them a team implied total of 24.25 at home. That is good for 8th best on the main slate. Tampa Bay down at 21.25 is 17th best. Again, that's out of 26 total teams. Tampa Bay side on offense, 18th and 11th in pass protection and pass DVOA. unfortunately for them, Chargers number 5 and number 6. So that's green in the terms of good for the defense. They're in the top 10. Tampa Bay just outside the top 10 in terms of DVOA, but might be under a little bit of duress here. I'd expect the ball to have to get out a little bit quicker here in this particular matchup. That's probably going to favor Cade Otton in the running backs here. So I'd expect Rachaad White to actually get heavily involved in this particular matchup. Maybe Jalen McMillan if he's going to be running some more underneath routes, but I think that's more of the Sterling Shepard role. Evans could get his, but that's not necessarily his game and the quick routes or anything like that. I think that's going to be more of the Sterling Shepard running back, Cade Otton type of week here for Tampa Bay based off of this matchup. And then that DVOA is just telling me that Tampa Bay is not going to be super explosive. They're going to have to really grind out to move the ball here via the air while getting the ball out quick. The one matchup that does look really good on paper, Tampa Bay 3rd in run blocking, 7th in run DVOA, both green. Chargers actually red. They're 23rd in run stopping, so that's plus 20 in the favor of Tampa Bay's offense. And then Chargers middle of the pack in the run DVOA. It's a plus 9 for the Tampa Bay offense. This is telling me you're going to want to attack the Tampa Bay running backs in this particular matchup. Now, if Bucky Irving is, limited all week with his back, I would expect him to actually play, but he would be in threat of, leaving the game early or just being limited in the game, and I'd be a lot more leaning towards Rachaad White, and if maybe even more so in large field tournaments, if Bucky Irving is active, putting White in there. I was thinking about it last week and ended up not doing that just as hey, I think they should be able to score points on Tampa Bay, but didn't do that. I think this week could be something similar where, hey, Bucky Irving's playing. Nobody's going to be playing Rachaad White because they view him as the backup. And then, Bucky Irving, they're just trying to prevent him from furthering his injury. Maybe they give him 5 or 6 touches. They get Sean Tucker a little bit more involved. He gets 5 or 6 touches. And then we see Rachaad White get the bulk of the volume. He's got 10, 15 touches on the ground, and then he's got 6 or 7, targets in the pass game, trying to get the ball out a little bit quicker. This is shaping up to be more of a Rachaad White game, I think. Just keep an eye out for that injury. If we get a full practice there from Bucky Irving, I expect him to kind of take that lead role running the ball, and it looks like the most successful area here for Tampa Bay's offense. And he does get involved in the pass game as well. Chargers wise, they're going to be under duress as well. They're 28th in pass protection, so taking a lot of sacks. Tampa Bay 13th in the pass rush. I mean, they're not great in that category, but that is a big mismatch in their favor. They should be able to get after the quarterback and generate some sacks. The pass DVOA, though, is flip-flopped. Chargers 12th, Tampa Bay 21st on defense, telling me that despite getting the ball out quick, they're probably going to be pretty explosive when they pass it. Just monitor the Ladd McConkey injury. If he doesn't play, then you kind of get some interesting plays. I think McConkey benefits very much from this. He's more of a short intermediate guy, can win quickly. Otherwise, start looking at the running backs and tight ends usually. The running backs, they don't really throw to them. It doesn't seem like that's Gus Edwards' forte for sure. And we've seen Kamani Vidal just really underwhelm with his opportunities in that regard. So then it leads me to the tight ends. Will Disley hurt? I think it could be a Stone Smart type week. You're probably going to hear that from lots of bigger sites too, just kind of the way this is lining up. He could be a sneaky play. If he ends up getting a lot of roster percentage, it could be one of those where you fade him in large field tournaments just because you don't want a chalky guy that's a little bit more volatile like that with a high risk of giving you 0. If he's going to be somebody that no one is on, he could be an interesting dart throw in DFS. In terms of the run game, Chargers, not a great matchup necessarily there either. Tampa Bay is 13th in stopping the run. Chargers are 26th in run blocking this year, so it's a plus 13 for Tampa Bay's defense, and then they're plus 4 in the DVOA category on defense. So doesn't look like Chargers will be real good at running the ball if Ladd McConkey's there, and I think that offense can run the ball at that point. Just based off of what I'm seeing here, Tampa Bay not great in the pass game here, but that run game should be pretty effective. I think Tampa Bay does have some players that they can get the ball out quickly to. Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker, all very good pass catchers coming out of college. They do have Sterling Shepard, who's decent in those quick pass categories. They do have Jalen McMillan, who seems otherwise all right, and he's more of the kind of intermediate, win quickly type. And Mike Evans is Mike Evans, so I think kind of the way this is shaping up with such a huge matchup favor for the running backs and the wide receivers maybe matching up a little bit better, and the running backs matching up better with how this goes. And the Chargers maybe not being super successful with McConkey out. If McConkey's out, I'm going to go ahead and just say we're giving the upset alert here. I think Tampa Bay can head into Los Angeles and put up a fight here. Both of these teams play very slow. If they're running the ball with Tampa Bay here and otherwise playing slow, I'd expect this game total at 45.5. That's not super high, but they might not meet that. I'm okay betting the under on this Vegas game total, just the way this is shaking out. Both offenses look like they're not going to be phenomenal, and then they also play very slow paced, so expect an under on this matchup. All right, and the 7th best game total on the slate. I believe this is tied with some others here. We have Indianapolis heading into Denver in the Peyton Manning Bowl here. So 44 Vegas game total, Denver 4-point home favorites, giving them a 24 team implied total, 10th best out of 26 teams. Indianapolis 20 team implied total, 19th best out of 26 teams. Indianapolis side 12th and 22 in the pass protection and pass DVOA categories. Denver number 3, number 8. So they are heavily in the favor of the defense here. I'd expect them to have to get the ball out quickly. Denver should be able to generate some sacks against Indianapolis here, and Anthony Richardson, no stranger to taking those sacks or making some bad decisions there in the pocket. And then that pass DVOA 22nd for Indianapolis, Denver 8. I do think that's heavily in the favor of Denver there. They should be able to shut down this Indianapolis pass attack. Looking like Denver's defense is maybe one that we want to watch, especially looking at the run categories. Indianapolis 32nd in run blocking, Denver 6th. Indianapolis 14th, though, in run DVOA, much better, but Denver number 2 in the run DVOA. So really looking like Denver's going to shut down Indianapolis's defense or offense. Defense here for Denver, certainly in play for DFS. I think they could be very successful in this, and Richardson's no stranger to throwing some boneheaded plays. Would not be shocked to see Denver's defense score in this particular matchup. Now on the Denver side, they get the ball out quick, so their offensive pass protection is a little bit inflated due to that, but we also have Bo Nix being very mobile, a lot more mobile, I think, than people expected coming into the league. So they don't take a lot of sacks. They're number 3rd in that category, but number 3 in that category. Indianapolis, though, 25th, so not generating a lot of sacks. Denver should have more time than they're used to in that pocket, which is good for Bo Nix to carve them up. Pass DVOA is evenly matched here, so I'd expect Cortland Sutton to actually have a pretty good game here. If they've got time to throw, Bo Nix will find him and get the ball to him. I think that's going to be a very good play for Sutton here, and watch him as those fantasy points go up in this particular matchup. Now in the run game, Denver 13th in run blocking, Indianapolis 21st. That's a +7 here, a +8 for Denver on the offensive side, but then the DVOA is kind of flip-flopped. We have Indianapolis 19, Denver 27. That's a +8 for the defense. So when they're flip-flop like that, I kind of lean more towards the DVOA aspect. I don't think Denver is going to be running the ball super effectively, even though they might be gaining positive yardage. It's probably going to be less than expected in terms of, hey, a normal play for here is 4 yards, they're gaining 3, and I think that's kind of how that's going to end up going for Denver. They're just when they run the ball, it's not going to be as effective as you'd hope. The pass game looks like they're going to have a lot of time, and that's probably going to be how they move the ball a little bit more effectively in this matchup. Indy, I don't see scoring a lot of points. Denver, it's not terrific matchups either on offense or defense, but both teams do play relatively quick. Vegas game total seems in line for this, but Denver +4 or whatever, Denver +4 here. Do they cover that 4 points? I certainly think they can hold Indy below that 20, and the issue with me is maybe do they put up 24? I don't know. All right, and then we have our other game at 44 for the Vegas game total is Kansas City heading into Cleveland. I don't know what the weather is supposed to be like. I always keep an eye on that on these home games in Cleveland at this time of year. But that 44 Vegas game total, we have Kansas City as 4-point road favorites, giving them the 24 team implied total, and Cleveland the 20 team implied total. So this is exactly the same as the previous matchup that we just looked at. 4-point road favorites on the 44 Vegas game total. Kansas City 10th best, Cleveland 19th best out of the 26 teams. So Kansas City pass protection 20th, 14th in pass DVOA, Cleveland 8th in pass rush. So they should be able to get after the quarterback here, Patrick Mahomes. He's probably going to have to get the ball out a little bit quicker. We're looking at dump-offs to the running back position, Juju Smith-Schuster, and probably Noah Gray and Travis Kelce as your options here in the pass game, looking more towards avoiding somebody like Xavier Worthy in a matchup like this. I just don't think he's going to get heavily involved if they're under a little bit more pressure. And then the DVOA, though, Kansas City 14th, Cleveland 25th. Cleveland hasn't been good in terms of stopping the pass, giving up a little bit more than expected. Despite being able to get after the quarterback, they do give up some chunk plays. So expect guys like Noah Gray and the running backs to be super successful when they do get the ball dumped off to them. Could be one of those Juju surprise weeks. Or, these tight ends and running backs get a little bit more involved and everybody just kind of, rises up a little bit. Run game pretty evenly matched here, slightly in the favor of Cleveland's defense in the run stopping category. So number 1 in run stopping is Cleveland, Kansas City number 6. That's a -5 for the offense, and then a +5 for the offense in the run DVOA. Again, when they're kind of flip-flop like that, I do lean towards the DVOA aspect more than the run blocking. So I think the run game should be okay here in Kansas City. Pass game is going to have to get the ball out quick, but they should otherwise be pretty explosive. And I think that's maybe how Kansas City ends up moving the ball against Cleveland. Just watch out for the weather there. Not a ton of aspects that I'm interested in playing in DFS. Kansas City hasn't been explosive. They're really the only thing that they've been doing is putting up a lot of points with their kicker. And if you're in a league that starts kickers, I think they're certainly in play here where they may take a sack, go backwards, whatever, under pressure. Didn't get the ball out in time or that drive stalls, and then the run game isn't enough to overcome that, and then they end up kicking more field goals. So, not interested in really any Kansas City players in DFS unless you're doing a dart throw on like Noah Gray or Juju Smith-Schuster for somebody super cheap. On the Cleveland side, they're 27th and 32nd in the pass categories, both red. Kansas City 22nd and 17th, so should be able to generate some pressure on the quarterback here. I think this number is actually improving since Deshaun Watson got out with Jameis Winston there. So he does take his fair share of sacks. Kansas City might generate some pressure to do that, but otherwise 22nd is almost in the red category. Cleveland might have a little bit more time than they're used to, which is also good for Jameis Winston. In terms of pass DVOA, though, Cleveland still at 32nd, Kansas City's middle of the pack at 17. Kind of in favor of the defense here in the pass game. The run game's even a bigger favor. Kansas City number 10 and number 7 in stopping the run. Cleveland 31st and 29th in running the ball. Wouldn't expect Cleveland to move the ball very well on the ground. If they're going to move it, it's going to be via the air, and that's also not a very good matchup. Just don't see Cleveland putting up a lot of points here. But again, a lot of these numbers come with Deshaun Watson under center. It's maybe a little better under Jameis Winston's watch. He does seem to get the best out of the snaps that he does play, despite being highly volatile. Bad plays, turnovers, whatever. He ends up getting there for fantasy in terms of getting yardage and getting his receivers and everybody else, pass catchers, involved there. But really, one that I'm avoiding. I don't like the Kansas City pieces. I certainly don't like the Cleveland pieces here. Probably avoiding this game in DFS. All right, now we got 2 games tied for 9th best on the main slate. In the ugliest matchup colors bowl this week, we have Washington heading into New Orleans to face the Saints. Washington actually 7.5-point road favorites here on a 43 Vegas game total. That gives them a 25.25 team implied total, which is good for 6th best on the main slate. New Orleans team implied total of 17.75 at home is 25th out of 26 teams. Not looking good for them. Washington side, 17th in pass protection. New Orleans 26th in pass rush. Washington should have some time to throw the ball. New Orleans hasn't been generating a lot of sacks, so that's good for Jaden Daniels this week. He should have a pretty solid matchup. And then we're looking at the pass DVOA for Washington at number 4, New Orleans 12. Again, that's in the favor of Washington's offense, so the pass game should be all right in this. Otherwise, pretty good matchup or above average matchup here for Washington's pass game. The run game, though, looks very, very juicy. Washington number 11 in run blocking. New Orleans 31st in stopping the run. Number 6 in run DVOA is Washington. New Orleans 31st in run DVOA. Really expect the run game to hum in this. If we have Brian Robinson Jr. playing a full allotment of snaps in this game and the offense moving the ball very well, I would not be shocked to see Brian Robinson Jr. score multiple touchdowns this week. I think that certainly is range of outcomes and an interesting play in DFS. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of people on him, but could be somebody that you're looking at, especially if he's going to play this week. I'm not sure where he's at in terms of his injury. Just monitor that. The run game should be very good here for Washington. On the New Orleans side, they're number 9 in pass protection, so not taking a lot of sacks, but that's with Derek Carr. They do have Jake Haener, from the sounds of it, starting. Washington number 17 in pass rush, so a little bit below average there in the pass rush category. New Orleans 24th in pass DVOA is not very good. Washington 26th in the pass DVOA. Pretty evenly matched there. Studs eat. New Orleans has no wide receivers in there. They're pulling guys off the street. They don't have any studs. Probably not going to be a good day at the office for New Orleans, despite maybe having some time to pass the ball. Jake Haener, I don't think, is going to get it done with the weapons involved this week. On the run blocking side, though, Kamara could get it done. They're 20th in run blocking. Washington 28th on defense, so that's a +8 for the offense here. Run game should be okay. Run DVOA for New Orleans, number 9. Washington 27, so we should see Alvin Kamara be successful in the run game. That's probably who they're going to lean on. The problem is we do have Kendre Miller. He stole a touchdown last week, got more involved in his first week back here, so he may be a little bit more involved than we want with New Orleans' record, what it is, and likely being out of the playoffs for the most part. I don't know if Kamara is going to get all of that volume. We might see Kendre Miller get a lot more involved so they can just see what he looks like going down the stretch. And this does look like a good matchup for the run game. Not so good for the pass game. If we expect Washington to be up in this particular matchup just because their offense looks pretty good here, Washington's defense may be in play here. Unless you just think the interim head coach there is just going to continue running the ball, get the game over with, something like that. But, fully expect Washington to win this game. I'm fine placing bets for Washington to win that. It's not going to pay you out a lot, but it does look very good on paper for them to dominate New Orleans this week. And the other ninth ranked game total on the slate at 43 is Dallas heading into Carolina. So two really terrible teams to begin the season that are now improving. So despite this being kind of a downer game, it's more of an intriguing for football type game where, hey, we've seen these teams now improving. Dallas gave Cincinnati a run for their money. Cincinnati, not a great record, but Carolina really has been improving the last 5 weeks. They've given a lot of fits to some really good teams. They haven't won any of those, but they have been playing them very difficult. And then we've also seen Dallas's defense turn around here and otherwise be, a competitive team in some of these matchups. So with that being said, the 43 Vegas game total, we have Carolina getting the standard home bump of a 3-point home favorite. That gives them a 23 team implied total, which is good for 13th best out of these 26 teams. Dallas at 20, tied for 19 with a few other teams. Offensive pass protection for Dallas, number 10, Carolina, number 29. I think they are improving in this category, 29 and 29 for their pass DVOA as well. I think they are improving in that category, like I had mentioned. But on paper, Dallas should have a lot of time to throw the ball, which is good for Cooper Rush. In terms of the pass DVOA, Dallas should find it a little bit easier to move the ball against Carolina. Just be aware that this 29, I think, is improving from the 32-31 range that it had been earlier in the season. But yeah, Dallas on paper, time to throw, and should otherwise be a little bit more successful passing the ball. Good for Cooper Rush, good for not Amari Cooper, but CeeDee Lamb there in Dallas. And then the run game, Carolina's still bad in that category, 32 and 32. They've just been absolutely awful. Dallas hasn't been able to run the ball very well, but they are improving, since Dowdle's taken over. So they're 16th in run blocking, 25th in run DVOA. Dowdle looks like the biggest beneficiary this week outside of maybe CeeDee Lamb in the pass game, but really those are the only three options from Dallas that you're anywhere interested in playing in any sort of lineup. Dowdle, Lamb, and Rush, if you're in a super flex or deeper league, can be viable this week against Carolina's otherwise right across the board, still weak but improving defense. On the Carolina side, they're number 4 in pass protection, so they're not taking a lot of sacks, surprisingly. Good on Bryce Young for the improvement we've seen there, but Dallas, number 9 in defensive pass rush. They've really been coming on in that category. So it looks like they could be under some pressure here. They're going to have to get the ball out a little bit quicker than they're used to. Fortunately, they have Adam Theilen back there. I think he is going to get peppered with some targets in this matchup just because they're going to be under duress. They're also going to need to get the ball out maybe to the tight ends and running backs. We should see, if Blackshear plays, he might see a few targets in this, but Hubbard should, crest the 4 or 5 target mark in this particular matchup as well. That pass DVOA, it's in the favor of Dallas. They're number 19 on defense. Carolina's at 30 in the pass DVOA, so they haven't been very good in that category, but trying to get the ball out quick. It's going to be more of an Adam Thielen week here for Carolina again. I wouldn't expect a ton from the other players, but they should otherwise get involved. I think Bryce Young is now supporting a little bit more than just the one option. It should be an interesting one here against Dallas. The run game, though, Carolina number 7 in run blocking, Dallas 30th. This is improving, but still they're pretty bad in that run game category. Carolina 19th in run DVOA, Dallas 29th. I would expect of anybody, Adam Thielen and Chuba Hubbard are probably going to have your best games here for Carolina. Very similar to Dallas, where the running back and the number 1 wide receiver are the ones that you're going to want to play. I'm just interested in this in a football context, but I think Hubbard is probably my favorite play in terms of a DFS play. I think he's got the highest ceiling here. We could also see Rico Dowdle with a pretty good mark, and they're probably both, Dowdle's going to be a little bit cheaper, but Hubbard, I think, is certainly in play, and those two should both be comfortably in your starting lineups, either as running back 2s or flexes this week. All right, and now we are on to the 11th best game total on the main slate, and that one is also tied for the 11th best. We're down at 42.5 for the Vegas game total here. Baltimore heading into the New York Giants Stadium to take them on, and Baltimore attributing most of that 42.5 Vegas game total in their team implied total because they are 16.5 point Vegas game favorites on the road. Let me just tell you straight off the bat, I don't know how accurate this is anymore, but about 3 years ago, I heard a stat where 90% of the time there's a road favorite by 10 or more points. So somebody going into somebody else's home stadium favored by 10 or more points, 90% of the time that home team will cover the spread in those scenarios. So keep that in mind when you're looking at this. Could it be a 30-13 score, 28-13? Still a big blowout, but within that 16.5 Vegas line. Keep in mind, I'm recording this Wednesday. I got stuff going on this weekend, dealing with my death of my father. So I am recording this Wednesday. This was at minus 15 or minus 15.5 to start the week. It's already been bet to minus 16.5. So keep that in mind. It could get all the way to like 17, 18 by the end of the week. It did shoot up pretty quickly here in a matter of 1 day to go up in this Vegas line by 1 or almost 1.5 points here. So it could even be worse than this come Sunday. Just keep an eye out for that. Getting into the matchup. Baltimore across the board is green. New York Giants, they're pretty good in the pass rush category at number 1, but I think they have some injuries along the defensive line, which is now affecting this. Probably not an accurate statement to say they're still really good in the pass rush category. Baltimore doesn't take a lot of sacks, but you could see them generate some pressure on Lamar, push him out of the pocket. could lead to a few more scrambles for him to throw the ball. A lot of times in those scramble drills, he's looking at Mark Andrews and he's looking at Zay Flowers more than anyone else. So keep that in mind. I think those guys maybe see a few more targets this week. And then if he is standing in the pocket, because this is a false number one due to injury, Baltimore should be very explosive in the pass game. They're number one in pass DVOA, Giants 28th. They got a lot of pass catchers that are weirdly relevant. So Isaiah Likely, we've seen him, the expectations are lower, but he does get involved. We've seen Mark Andrews now be a little bit more involved on a week-to-week basis before they went on their bye last week. Rashad Bateman seems to be more of their deep threat, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him have a good game here. Zay Flowers is, I believe, their number one target. But yeah, I think all four of those guys, certainly in play for having a good week here against the Giants. An interesting one here. Who do you pick from Baltimore? They're probably going to get up big on the Giants and probably going to do it very quick. Does that lead to less pass attempts later in the game? Probably, where they're going to lean a little bit more on Derrick Henry to finish this out. Run blocking side, number 5 versus number 11 here for the Giants. That's a +6 in the favor of Baltimore's run game. And then number 1 in run DVOA for Baltimore, number 15 for the Giants in the run DVOA. Again, this includes quarterbacks. The run blocking stuff was running backs only. So I would expect Baltimore to be able to run the ball very well. Derrick Henry should get involved. If they're moving the ball very effectively, we could see multiple touchdowns here from Derrick Henry in a matchup like this. We could also see, the final quarter and a half end up being the backup over there, Justice Hill, getting involved, and maybe he ends up at the end of the game. It's going to look bad at halftime, but by the end of the game, maybe he's got 70 or 80 yards and a touchdown himself in this particular matchup just because they're winning by so much. Just keep that in mind. He is maybe a dart throw in DFS, a long shot, but you're going to have to sweat it out until that final quarter and a half before he makes his hay. On the Giants side, red in the pass categories here, number 23 and number 28. Baltimore 11 and 16, improving drastically in their pass categories here. They were otherwise terrible until the last couple of weeks in the pass game, so I wouldn't expect this to be a very good matchup here. Surprisingly, it's about even with the run game, but Baltimore's run defense is a little bit better than their pass defense here. So number 9 in stopping the run, number 5 in run DVOA on defense for Baltimore, 9 and 5. Those are both green. Giants below average at number 19 and number 18. So doesn't look like the Giants are going to be able to muster much on offense. They're probably going to be in situations where they're passing a lot. If they're under pressure, which this is suggesting they will be, they're going to have to get the ball out a little bit quicker. So you might see Daniel Bellinger with quite a few targets. You might see Tyrone Tracy with quite a few targets. And then he's probably going to get involved in the run game as well. The other option is maybe Malik Neighbors or Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants in terms of getting the ball out quick and doing anything with it. But with DeVito back there, Baltimore defense just looking like it's in play here against the Giants if they're going to be up big, putting the Giants into scenarios where there's mistakes to be made. Passing the ball does lead to touchdowns potentially on defense there as well. But I can't assume much other than Baltimore is probably going to be the number 1 most expensive defense on both main sites. And perhaps surprisingly here, as the tied for 11th with the previous one, 42.5 Vegas game total, we have 2 very good teams here. Pittsburgh offense has been otherwise pleasant surprise. Philadelphia has been very good on offense as well, but they are tied for 11th in the Vegas game total at 42.5. That's because both defenses are also pretty good. So we actually have Philadelphia as 5.5-point home favorites here against Pittsburgh. That gives them a 24 team implied total, tied for 10th best on the main slate. Pittsburgh down at 18.5 is actually 23rd out of 26. So perhaps a little surprising there that Pittsburgh not viewed very poorly, I guess, by Vegas here. Getting into the matchup, I can maybe see why. The pass protection, number 22, Philadelphia has worked themselves from being a target in DFS earlier in the year to really killing it in the last 7 or so weeks on defense. They're now 4th and 5th in those pass categories. Pittsburgh 22 and 15th in the pass categories on offense. They're out George Pickens, so it's going to be even worse here for Pittsburgh. I know Russell Wilson has been involved and been pretty good. This is not looking good for him this week. He's going to be under a lot of duress, need to get the ball out quick Could see Najee Harris with a lot of targets. We could see the running backs in general get a lot of targets here. Pat Freiermuth maybe gets a little bit more involved as well. And then on the run blocking categories, Pittsburgh 17th and 21st, so a little bit below average there. Philadelphia number 14 and number 4, so pretty even in terms of just looking at the running backs. And then once you get the quarterbacks involved, that run DVOA for Philadelphia way up there at number 4, Pittsburgh 21st, which bodes really well for Philadelphia being pretty good in the run category here, and being able to, score touchdowns and things like that or prevent Pittsburgh from being able to have that option. So really, the best matchup here is Pittsburgh's just run blocking in general. Najee Harris, I think, is the only one from Pittsburgh that you may be able to play anywhere. The only one I'd feel comfortable starting in any sort of playoff matchup. Freiermuth maybe second on that list, but it's sketchy for both of them. Certainly people that I'm going to be avoiding in DFS. On the Philadelphia side, they're 31st in offensive pass protection, so taking quite a few sacks. Pittsburgh number 19 in that pass rush, a little below average. They do have some good players there that can get after the quarterback and generate some pressure, so that could be an issue for Philadelphia here where they have to get the ball out a little bit quicker. In those scenarios, they got Saquon Barkley. Grant Calcaterra could be an option as a replacement at tight end. Otherwise, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, I think, are certainly capable of getting open quicker. I just don't know which of those runs, those quicker or intermediate routes that often. You'd have to look up that information elsewhere. On the pass DVOA, Pittsburgh very good at number 7, Philadelphia 17th. So really not looking good for Philadelphia's pass game here. I don't think that's going to thrive here. A.J. Brown, could you sit him in a playoff matchup? Boy, oh boy, if you got, several wide receivers that are good and you can only start 2, I am probably fine avoiding A.J. Brown this week. I think it's another one of those where, he got 6 targets and he caught 5 or 6 of them and gained 60 yards, didn't score a touchdown, and sure, he's not losing you the week, but he's also not giving you that high upside that you want in the playoffs to defeat the team across from you. The run game for Philadelphia looking better. They're number 10 in the run blocking, number 3 in run DVOA. Pittsburgh number 4 in stopping the run, number 14 in the defensive run DVOA category. So Philadelphia should be okay running the ball here. Really not looking good for their offense in general. This is a weird game where both offenses look like they're going to struggle. Now we see why this Vegas game total is so low at 42.5. The Vegas line at 5.5 for Philly as a favorite. I'm not entirely sure where that comes from. Maybe just that run game, run DVOA being so good. They're going to lean on that. Both teams a little bit below average in terms of pace of play. I'm fine betting the under on this Pittsburgh-Philadelphia line. I don't know if they hit 43 combined right now, so I'd be fine betting the under on here and avoiding this game in general for DFS. I don't want any piece of this week. And lastly on the main slate, we have New York Jets heading into Jacksonville in the laughingstock of the NFL Bowl. 40.5 Vegas game total here. 3.5 point road favorites for the Jets heading into Jacksonville. So that gives them a 22 team implied total at number 14. And then 18.5 here for Jacksonville is 23rd out of the 26 teams. New York Jets, 13th in pass protection. The Jacksonville Jaguars, number 32 in the pass rush, number 32 in the pass DVOA. Jets should have plenty of time to throw the ball in this and get it to who they want to. The offensive pass DVOA is not very good for the Jets. They're 21st, so below average there. Bottom third, basically. Jacksonville at 32. Telling me that the Jets should otherwise be a lot more successful passing the ball. They're going to have time to throw the ball. It's good news for the Jets offense this week. In the pass game, Aaron Rodgers probably viable here against Jacksonville. The run blocking, New York Jets, 23rd and 28th. Breece Hall still struggling with the knee injury, so I don't expect him to play. The issue is that we've seen Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis split work there in the backfield. I think that's going to continue in this particular matchup. With Jacksonville stopping the run at a 25-18 clip, these are kind of in the favor of Jacksonville a little bit. So don't expect that run game to be particularly great, despite Jacksonville giving up the most points to the running back. I think outside of Carolina, they are number 2 in terms of adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs, but that's probably because they're getting beat so often. That just ends up being what happens. I think the Jets can move the ball. The run game should probably be a little bit more successful than they're otherwise used to, and then their offense passing the ball should be very good. So I think Jets can move the ball pretty efficiently here against Jacksonville. Don't be shocked if they put up some points. On the Jacksonville side, number 6 in pass protection, so not taking a lot of sacks. Jets, though, very good at getting after the quarterback. They're number 7. I'd expect Jacksonville to be under a little bit more pressure than they're used to. Hey, got to get the ball out a little bit quicker. That's probably going to be more of an Evan Ingram type week. Could see Parker Washington get a little bit more involved as well. Probably limits the upside, unfortunately, for Brian Thomas Jr. He's very good at getting open deep, but it sounds like he's a nifty little wide receiver. Don't be shocked if he gets some intermediate pass attempts here, or they get the ball out in a bubble screen or something to him to try to get him to do some stuff with the ball in his hand. I wouldn't be shocked if they try that, but it doesn't look like a super great game for him to have a blow-up spot here. And then, like I said, the pass DVOA, Jacksonville 19, Jets 23rd. That's actually in the favor of Jacksonville to be a little bit more successful throwing the ball. They're just going to need to get it out a little bit quicker. So could be an Evan Ingram week here against the Jets. And then the run game, pretty even. Jacksonville 18th on offense, Jets 19th in stopping the run on defense. So even up there, nothing to write home about. The run DVOA in the favor of Jacksonville at 16, Jets in the red at 23. So that's a +7 there for Jacksonville, and I would expect them to be able to run the ball a little bit here against the Jets. It's probably a little better for Tank Bigsby. You could have an all right week, especially if Jacksonville is trying to get the ball out a little bit quicker. You might see him with a couple of targets. Probably going to go more towards Travis Etienne in that category, but it does seem like Bigsby has taken over the running back position for this team for the time being, but Etienne still gets more involved in the pass game. Jacksonville does play pretty quick. Jets a little bit more of a neutral pace situation here, but yeah, don't be shocked if some of these Jacksonville running backs look a little bit better in fantasy here. And then the Jets pass game has a successful week here against Jacksonville. I would not be shocked on that. A lot more interested in some of these players in that Pittsburgh and Philadelphia game, which has some bigger names in it, but otherwise looks like a poor matchup. All right, now we're going to get into the Monday slate. That does it for the overall main slate. So we got 2 games on Monday Night Football. They're going to be playing at pretty much the exact same time. We're getting into the number 1 on the Monday Night Football slate, which is Atlanta heading into Las Vegas. Battle of the terrible defenses here. We actually have Atlanta, as bad as they've been playing with Kirk Cousins, they are 4.5-point road favorites. And that's because Las Vegas has run out of quarterbacks, and now who the heck are they starting? Desmond Ridder over there, and we've seen him certainly tank plenty of offenses in his day, including when he was in Atlanta just recently here. So interesting revenge game narrative for him, but this is a 44.5 Vegas game total. When I'm looking at island game matchups or something like a Thanksgiving slate where you got 1 or 2 games, 3 games on it, 44.5 isn't great. If it's an island game, I'm looking at maybe getting a kicker in there, maybe getting a defense, depending on what the situation looks like. But they're probably going to have one of those guys involved in the top 6 for the most optimal lineups that you could build. Let's keep that in mind. But the 4.5-point Vegas line here for Atlanta being the favorites gives them a 24.5 team implied total. That's second best out of the 4 teams on the Monday night slate. And then Vegas at 20 is the third best. Getting into the Atlanta side, they should have some time to throw the ball. They're 8th in offensive pass protection, so they don't take a lot of sacks. In Vegas, number 21 in the defensive pass rush, just doesn't get home to generate a lot of sacks. I'm not sure what their pressure rate is, but Atlanta, on paper here, looks like they should have time to throw. And then that pass DVOA, number 13, Vegas 22nd. They should be very successful throwing the ball, not only have time to throw, they should be very successful. This is going to benefit Darnell Mooney the most, I think. They're going to connect on some deep throws in this. And then we should also see Drake London get more involved in a matchup like this. And it's such a good matchup that even maybe Kyle Pitts could come out of nowhere to put up some fantasy points this week. But really, I think the Mooney is the biggest beneficiary, and we should see Drake London have some success in this matchup as well in terms of getting the ball and being successful when he does get targeted. Now in the run game, Atlanta number 12 in run blocking, Vegas number 8. That's when you basically take out the quarterbacks and just include what the running back outcomes were. A little bit there in the favor of Las Vegas, so it's not a great matchup for Bijan based off of that. But the run DVOA, number 8, Vegas number 25. So this is telling me, play-to-play basis, that might not be super good play-to-play, some behind the line of scrimmage, some, 1 to 5 yards. But then every once in a while, you might rip off a big one here from Bijan against this Vegas team. But otherwise, I think, Falcons are going to be moving the ball through the air. The run game is kind of complementary there and should be okay, helping them move along on the drives to keep those successful. Now, on the Vegas side, they're right across the board on offense. Fortunately for them, Atlanta really bad. They're, almost right across the board on defense. So 24th and 29th in the pass categories, 31st and 27th. Vegas should have time to throw. Ritter could, he didn't face this defense last year because they got a new coach, but he could have some time to throw the ball here, which is good for his pass catchers. Bowers and Jacoby Myers are really the only ones that you're going to be interested there from in Vegas. And that's really all we can write home about. They should be otherwise successful. It's just whether or not Desmond Ridder can maintain the offense there. He's been bad, but this is a bad Atlanta offense as well. So who knows what happens. Just if you're going to play any of these Vegas players, it's probably Bowers and Myers that are generating the most points for you. And then in the run category, Vegas 29th and 31st, pretty bad there. Sincere McCormick named the starter. Alexander Madison will play behind him. And that's kind of how that's going to roll out there for Vegas. And then at the Atlanta side, they're 24th in run stopping, 21st in run DVOA. So they're actually slightly in the favor here on defense. I wouldn't expect the Raiders to be super good here, but Atlanta not great here. And maybe with Sincere McCormick running the ball, this ends up looking a little bit better than when you have Zamir White and Alexander Madison and like a 40-year-old Amir Abdullah running the ball for you on the ground. So this could be, one of those false advertising ones where maybe the run game's a little bit better than you expect. But based on this, I think Atlanta's offense moves the ball just fine. Vegas, they might be okay moving the ball. I'm fine with this Vegas line at 4.5. 44.5 though. I could see this going more of a volatile rut if we have Kirk Cousins humming and we see Desmond Ridder actually have a good game against this terrible Atlanta offense. They could blow this 44.5 out of the water. If Kirk Cousins continues to play the terribleness that he has, 0 touchdowns, 9 interceptions or something in his last 3 or 4 outings, we could see this really come crashing down, and Desmond Ridder, just doesn't move the offense. We could see this end up being like a 10-13, 9-12 type of game, and it really, really missing this mark. So highly volatile, 44.5, I guess, is right in the middle of maybe the median outcome there. Good job, Vegas. All right, and final matchup here on Monday Night Football. We have Chicago heading into the dome of Minneapolis, Minnesota, here with the Vikings. It's a 43.5 Vegas game total. A 7-point home favorite here for Minnesota gives them a 25.25 team implied total. That is number 1 for this Monday night slate. Chicago at 18.25 is the worst out of the 4 teams. Looking at the pass protection, 32nd, Minnesota number 12 in the pass rush. They do generate some pressure with some of their players there. They do get sacks. Chicago very generous with giving those up, so I'd expect that to continue here in Minnesota. And that pass DVOA, Minnesota number 2, Chicago 25. I know Minnesota gives it up to the wide receiver position in terms of fantasy points, and they really looked good against Chicago here for a while, and then all of a sudden Caleb Williams had a really good second half and ended up being very good for fantasy when this was in Chicago. I just don't know if that's going to be this week's scenario. It's in Minnesota. I think the defense actually dominates them here in this. That's certainly what it looks like on paper. In the pass game, should be giving them fits. But, NFC North matchup, division rivals, those games always can get a little bit weird with how they adjust, especially after they've already played each other once this year. Chicago side for running, they're 30th in run blocking, Minnesota 12th in run stopping. Chicago 22nd in run DVOA. Minnesota number 3 in run DVOA. So don't expect Chicago to be very good running the ball either. Just in general, I see why they are the worst on the Monday night slate here. Even that 18.25 would have been one of the worst on the main slate. So not looking good for their offense. It's been that way all season. A lot of really, really bad games from Caleb Williams with, a sprinkling of some really impressive fantasy numbers at the end of some of these games. Minnesota side for pass protection, they're 29th. Chicago 15th in that pass rush. That was kind of the heart of their defense at the beginning of the year. We've seen that now slipping. It used to be inside the top 10. Now they're more of an average team here, which means recently they've been a little worse than that average, I'm assuming. So pass protection, maybe some time to throw for Minnesota here, but they do just take some sacks. I think that's a Sam Darnold thing. Offensive line does have some miscues on the plays that I've been watching. It just seems like what the heck went on there, people getting through the line. So I wouldn't expect it to really be much different here against Chicago. Standard day at the office probably for Minnesota in terms of what they're used to for pass protection and all that stuff. Now the pass DVOA, Minnesota number 7, Chicago 14, slightly in the favor here of Minnesota. Chicago has been, as I had mentioned, a little bit more poor in that category over the last month or so. Maybe that's a better matchup on paper than this looks, but regardless, it's in the favor of Minnesota. Might need to get the ball out a little bit quicker, so maybe we see some dump-offs to Aaron Jones, and we see Hawkinson get a little bit more involved here from Minnesota. That remains to be seen, but yeah, a few quicker throws. Pass game should otherwise be pretty successful. On the run game, though, that looks very juicy. Aaron Jones week, perhaps, especially if they're getting the ball out quick on the offensive pass game and him getting a few more targets. The run game looks very juicy. Minnesota 8 in run blocking, Chicago 29th. It's red-green matchup. Those are ones that we like to attack. Chicago's been very bad in the run category all season. They are 30th in run DVOA, Minnesota 17th in run DVOA, so right around average. So good matchup here for Aaron Jones. Wouldn't be shocked if he is the one person from Minnesota that you're going to want. Minnesota does play slow, 27th in neutral situation, 25th in pace of play. This was really high the last few years with Kirk Cousins there. Props to Kevin O'Connell. I think he recognizes if I limit the amount of plays that I give to Sam Darnold, that's less sack opportunities. That's less opportunities for him to make mistakes passing the ball. He's slowed down the pace of that offense. Minnesota also, with the record that they have, they've been not trailing that often. They're actually number 1 in game time trailing, so they haven't been trailing very often. But even so, that 27th neutral situation pace of play is really slow compared to the rest of the league. So, slow team just in general. But it looks very good for Aaron Jones here. I do think Minnesota, based off of what I see here, should be able to cover this 7-point line, win by more than that. Wouldn't be shocked to see that. Offense should be okay, and the defense should dominate Chicago. Minnesota's defense may even score in this category. So with a 43.5 Vegas game total, if this is the one game that you're playing in an island game slate, I'm looking at Minnesota's defense, being in the optimal lineup probably as well. So keep that in mind. That's going to do it for the adjusted line play report here on week 15. Again, this was recorded on Wednesday. I'm getting it out to you early. I got stuff to do on the weekend, so I'll be out starting on Thursday. But I want to make sure you guys are covered for your afternoon slates. After all, if you're in the playoffs, this is super important to you to make sure that you're starting the right players and getting those guys in there, and that's what we're here for. I'm here to get you guys a little bit more info for your weekly info grab so you can make better start-sit decisions, make prop bets, and make those DFS lineups for you to win money. Absolutely love when people send me, hey, this is what I did this week thanks to you, and I won some money. I love hearing that stuff. Somebody even said I was the GOAT of fantasy football earlier because they went on an 8-game win streak after they started following my advice on here. So we certainly have some success receipts that we can post out there for some of the followers on here. But yeah, I'm glad it's going well for everybody. Want to make sure that you guys are covered. So recorded it Wednesday. Just be aware of that. Some of this stuff could change by game time on Sunday. Just be aware of that. Have a good one, everybody. Go out there, win some money. Peace.